Just want to remind folks who are attending that we still actively are recruiting for board members and advisory board members to come on and help out with the all the help we need on the board. There's lots of activity and many hands make the task light, as they say. So we'll have some guests we're going to introduce in a minute. We have some announcements coming up. We'll talk about some zoning issues. And then really we want to spend the bulk of the night opening things up to the residents just to get some feedback and hear what's on everybody's minds in terms of comments and suggestions and feedback. Any questions that we may be able to answer for you as well. Okay, so just a couple quick announcements, everybody, for upcoming hearings or meetings. I know people may actually even want to be talking about the public hearing that was held today at the state legislature on different zoning bills that are being proposed that impact the control of local zoning. So we can talk about that, but I'll go over some other public hearings. And I think, did I just see Jim Travers come in?
You did.
Okay. So
you did. I just needed to unmute myself. How are you?
There you go. Hi, welcome. Nice to meet you.
You too, virtually, unfortunately.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly. Hopefully we'll all be together again soon. And I'm not sure if Garrett's able to jump on.
He is. He should be. He was just, we were working on a presentation earlier. We just signed up for it, but he should be joining any second.
Great. Okay, so we'll keep an eye out for him. So really what we wanted to do, Jim, is just have you guys introduce yourselves as the new directors coming in for transportation, mobility, and parking. And then what we would really love to do is at a later meeting, either possibly May or June, I think would be good if you're available. Or we could maybe even have a special meeting. We would love for one or both of you to be our guests as guest speakers for the evening, because there's a lot of in East Norwalk, within East Norwalk, our geographic area, we have a lot of things to talk about with all three of the components that fall under you. Transportation, parking, and mobility. So there's lots to talk about. And then maybe before we let you go tonight too, we can talk about what's the process for signing up to have you do a tour here, like we've heard you've done in other neighborhood associations and in the districts as well.
Yeah, so I mean, what we've been trying to do is we're trying to reach out to all of the elected officials first and try to get with the elected officials just to hear from them, do a little thing. But certainly let us try to get through to the elected official folks, and then we'll be certainly make it. We can come back. Hopefully by then the weather will be a little warmer. We've been delayed with this because we had some not so great weather, and it's like we started to feel like last week was like we're over this hurdle, right? And we're going to have warm weather. And then today is freezing again, right? So, but yeah, certainly let's try to, we're just trying to get to the elected officials, and then we can be certainly back with you guys at any point in time.
Great, thanks.
I like the walk arounds. I just think it's better, to.
Do you know yet? So have you reached out to the council folks or the third taxing district elected officials yet in East Norwalk? Or
so we haven't been to East Norwalk yet, but we will be there shortly. We were getting a little bit of the people who kind of jumped on board real quickly, and then also at the same time trying to get up to speed with the various things. So there's a lot to do within 3 weeks. So yeah. And
I'll tell you, it would be nice too when we arrange it, if part of it could be the walking tour, but also take one of the little mini buses from the city, because on the mobility side of things here with transportation, it's a good way to really see where there are kind of bottlenecks and some challenges in East Norwalk, but we can work out the details of that once you get closer to coming to visiting us. So
and you just taught me that there's mini buses available in city, which I didn't know that. So we can certainly do it.
Yep, and I don't know if they borrow them from the transit department but that would be something you could coordinate with Steve Kleppen, who normally does that, like with consultant groups and other organizations that come in that would require a tour.
All right, so I'll reach out to Steve, see where he got that from.
Great, yeah. So we just wanted to hear a little bit about your background, and we know that you just joined Norwalk recently, so you're just getting your feet wet. But I think both of you came in from Stanford, and there's still they're still mourning the loss over there, I understand. So
So I don't know, did Garrett join yet? There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
okay.
So
Hi, Garrett,
perfect.
welcome.
How are you doing? Thank you.
Good,
I'm glad to be
nice
here.
to meet you. Nice to see you.
Great. And I look forward to meeting everyone in person as well.
Thank you.
All right, so look, we'll give you a little brief on me. I don't want to take up all your meeting, but so I was the executive director for transportation, traffic, and parking in the city of New Haven under then Mayor John DeStefano, who kind of really did the creation of this department, really understanding that how transportation and a whole network works, and just the fact that traffic, we all know traffic is one of the big issues all the time, right? Parking also big issue sometimes, right? So we got it. So worked under Mayor DeStefano until he opted not to seek re-election. So as a mayoral appointee, you go with the mayor. And so then short gig, but then you basically transitioned into Stanford and been the bureau chief for transportation parking under Mayor Martin, who established this department for some very similar reasons, right? In Stanford is where I hired Garrett, and so Garrett was largely my assistant in Stanford. Look, I almost said Norwalk, right? And I'm already getting so I think under that umbrella, we saw record number of grants that we received. I think we really moved a lot of projects that had been on the plate for a long time. I think some of our proudest accomplishments, I think that of just the lowest accident rates in history, the lowest bicycle crashes since we've been tracking bicycle crashes, and pedestrian deaths and serious injuries are far below that of the state and national average. So I think there are many other accomplishments that we could put to our hat. Many of the first things that we've done, but it is the results, I think, that have been key. I think, and it is the same results that we'll look to try to achieve in Norwalk. And I think we deliver that through data, right? So we will be, we're starting to look at, crash locations, top 10 crash locations. I have Greg, who is, starting to pull those together. We had a meeting on that today, but unfortunately got digressed into something else, as earlier cases do. So, we're trying to juggle different things, and the conversations are very great, right, at this point. So we'll look at those things and how they can go. Where mobility is. There's the one thing is we get lots of data that we could do now. So we'll start to look at how we could utilize data to get some really great stuff, right? But I think, it is the data and is the conversations that we have with the people, right, that make it, that help facilitate that change. But I'll let Garrett talk a little bit about himself for 2 seconds, and then we'll just, we'll say, go from there.
Thanks.
Thank you. And thank you for having us tonight. And I'm really excited to get out and meet everyone, and definitely excited to ride that minibus. But just a little bit more about myself. I'm a professional engineer, professionally licensed engineer, and I'm also a professional traffic operations engineer. So I'm one of 31 in the state with that designation, and I believe the only one in a municipality right now with that certification. As Jim mentioned, we're really into roadway safety, and I'm currently also pursuing a roadway safety certification and hoping to be one of 7 in the state and one of the only ones in the municipality with that. And I think a lot of those principles are what helped us achieve the lowest accident rates, whether it's vehicles, crashes, pedestrians, or cyclists in Stanford. And it's definitely something that we hope to continue in Norwalk. I have an extensive background in planning. I worked for a consulting firm, Clark Associates, and not only were we doing planning and traffic impact studies, but we were also peer reviewing others. So I have an extensive background in that. More recently, I was Jim's assistant in Stanford, and worked to help the city create and adopt the first bicycle and pedestrian plan and also we had the Complete Streets ordinance, but also our first Complete Streets policy. And it's a lot of those principles which we utilize on a daily basis too. And we're really fortunate to have some award-winning and nationally recognized projects and some different grants in the city and other projects recognized by industry leaders. And I think, it really comes down to the multimodal approach. And you spoke about mobility. And then also just our public engagement and working with property owners, neighborhood associations, and area representatives to come up with solutions that really worked for everyone. Great. But I'm very excited. I see a lot of great opportunities and similar challenges in Norwalk. So I'm very excited to start working with the community and meeting everyone in person as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think you'll see in East Norwalk that we have, it's really, I think it's kind of unique of all the neighborhoods, just because of the water access and the bridges and I-95 access and the train station, all kind of coming together. And then there's an awful lot of infrastructure and road work and bridge work that's pending too. So there'll be some unique challenges there. So we really just wanted to be able to kind of put a face to the name so that folks know that you came on board. And I think what we'll do is we'll invite people to, we kind of always have these topics, top of mind in terms of all three of transportation, mobility, and parking. In East Norwalk. So, we'll funnel stuff into you. We invite the community to communicate directly with you, to send stuff in and through ENNA as well. But we would love to have you back. I don't think you were on yet, Garrett. And I told Jim that we'd like to have you in as our guest speakers for one of our meetings, maybe in May or June. To have you come in for the evening, and hopefully it would be after you've already been within East Norwalk to kind of get an idea of flavor of the neighborhood. And
then, we would be delighted to.
Yeah, exactly. That would be really good. So you're both welcome to stay on in the meeting and or not. I know that this was very last minute. We really thank you for accepting the invitation. I think it was late Friday night that we did this. So appreciate you hopping on at the last minute. You're welcome to stay, but also feel free to log out, and then we'll communicate with you as you're coming into East Norwalk. You have fantastic. My email and the association email, so just reach out.
All right, fantastic. Unfortunately, we can't show it stand tonight because we have a presentation first thing tomorrow morning. Okay. So Garrett and I just have to work on finalizing that one. But thank you, and we do look forward to hearing from you going forward.
Great, thank you both. Appreciate it. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you.
Nice
Have a
great
night.
Have a good night.
All right, bye.
Bye.
So we'll have those guys back as guests. They just hopped on, like I said, just real quick, just so that you would know that they've joined Norwalk and what their names are, and we'll have them back. And if you have some particular concerns under transportation, mobility, or parking, we can discuss them tonight under our open meeting, or feel free to email into us as well. So just a couple of quick announcements here. Let me just move this thing over. So in the public hearings, like I started to say before the guys hopped on, is we'll probably have some discussions tonight, I bet, and some questions regarding the public hearing today up at the state. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to jump on that, so I'll have to catch it after the fact on YouTube or on the state channel there. And then other public hearings that are coming up, the 1st District Water Department, which covers, I think, almost everyone in East Norwalk. You may have had a notice or seen it on their website already that they are going to be, they're already implementing an April 1st water restriction conservation mandatory, starting on April 1st, and I think it's through October 31st. And it deals with irrigation. So they're limiting the amount of days that irrigation systems can be used on any property, and also the amount of water that you can use. And they're doing it based on odd and even house numbers. So you'll want to jump on to our email that went out this weekend. We have details in there, or you can jump on to firstdistrictwater.org and get the details there. So that's something that's being implemented for April 1st, which is right around the corner. But in conjunction with that, they're having a public hearing on March 24th because they have to hear from the public to vote on, I guess, enacting this. I'm not sure from reading the legal notice if they mean to do this permanently every year, regardless of water levels. So folks may want to jump onto that public hearing or get some more information from First District Water if you're have any concerns with water restrictions or conservation efforts. And that's on the 24th at 6 p.m. And the link is in the email that I sent. And then ENNA, our own group, it's looking like we probably will have a couple of special meetings coming up, because just meeting monthly, there's really too much stuff going on right now to keep up with it and not get back together again as a group. One of those things is the public hearing that I just mentioned, which is the state zoning legislation, which has a number of bills that impact local zoning control, amongst other things. And then also ENNA has our own zoning subcommittee going on. And then the city has their industrial zone study going on. And their consultants have now come back with their initial recommendations for the industrial zones, neighborhood, business, and commercial zones, all three of which exist in East Norwalk. They posted the link to their PowerPoint and to their presentation in the email, and they are targeting with Steve Kleppen to have public forum and public outreach starting in mid to late April. So I just want to get that on everybody's radar screen so that in case we need to have a special meeting for that, we'll certainly let everybody know. And Steve Kleppen mentioned that what they may do is have they'll do a meeting in the evening and a meeting in the daytime so that they can accommodate, all the demographics so that as many people can attend as possible. Okay, a few quick statuses here. The, I think is Sarah Hunter on?
Yeah, actually, Marianne is going to give that status.
Okay, thank you. Is Marianne on?
Yep,
Thanks,
I'm
Sarah.
on. Yep.
Hi.
We've got a great team of 5 volunteers and 2 board members. Sarah and I are the board members. We've had 2 meetings thus far, but we've made quite a bit of progress. And essentially what we're doing is taking any zone that exists within East Norwalk zip code and diving into the zone as of right uses as well as special permit, and ranking them, whether we think they're either appropriate or inappropriate, and then some justification as to why. We're also looking at not just that particular zone, but the zones and what they're abutting. And in addition, we're kind of just looking at it holistically and being like, does having industrial here where it's surrounded by residential really make sense? We're sort of looking at it from many different angles. And so far what we've done is Nick Dreama, actually one of the lead to the volunteers, has created this excellent Google Doc where we each have our own tab and we go through it and rank each of the uses within each of the zones, and then rationale as to why we think it's acceptable or not acceptable. This Thursday, we're going to have a longer meeting than normal to sort of discuss our rationale and net out to where we all come to some sort of consensus. And then Nick has also created a interactive Google map of East Norwalk where you can see the different zones and where they sit within the other zones. Wow. So that when this finally comes into some sort of a presentation format, when we're talking about, as an example, industrial zone A1 or industrial zone 1, we can see these are where those areas are. This is what's permitted. This is what we think is acceptable, not acceptable, and even potentially ideas of what should be included in there. So it'll give us a very, very nice perspective of zoning within East Norwalk.
Great. Thank you, Mary Ann. And then do you think that just timeline and not holding the subcommittee feet to anything, but are we looking at April still for preliminary
We should
review?
be okay with that. Yeah. I mean,
Great.
we're kind of piecing it all together. We've also got certain team members that are reaching out to Steve Kleppen directly with some ancillary questions that we're,
Great.
discussing during our meetings. So I think it's going to end up being a really nice document.
Thank you so much. And I think the timing of this is really important too, Mary Ann and Sarah, who are co-leads from our board on this effort, because at the same time the city is doing the industrial zone study, Steve Kleppen's group is also doing a zoning regulation review, which has to do with how each one of the zones and the uses are actually managed when it comes to applications. And so that's really important. And the timing of the state legislation too, you guys, that I was just speaking about, is going to be really important, because one of the key changes that's being proposed is that uses, especially around transit hubs, uses that right now in most communities are only by special permit and thus requiring a public hearing, would automatically move to as of right. So they would be basically approved with no public input at all. So I think the timing of us looking at this in conjunction with the city effort is really important, especially in understanding what could happen at the state level that could impact us, which, like we would have no control over. So we're trying to get up to speed on that as quickly as we can. And Chris Perrone, who's the state rep, is going to get back to us when he kind of sinks his teeth into this more with his position on it. And State Rep Stephanie Thomas, who also has a chunk of 06855 that she represents, has expressed some concerns with the legislation. And she's also preparing some comments, and I think she may have done some testimony today as well. So we'll also coordinate with them because they actually represent us at the state level.
Diane, was
Thank
there
you.
a recording of that meeting today? Because that is, in a nutshell, the idea that a lot more stuff is as of right without public input.
Yeah. So it all gets recorded. I'm not sure if it gets uploaded on the state site or YouTube,
Okay.
but I will find it and I will post it. And then all public testimony is also public record. So they make the written testimony available on the General Assembly website. And I think the link to the video will ultimately be there too. If it's there tonight, I will find it and post it and send it out in an email. And I think Charles is still on, and we'll get it posted on the ENNA website and on social media as well.
And
I understand too from Stephanie Thomas and Chris Perrone that these are still essentially what they call concept bills. So there'll be another bite at the apple because the sense that we had is that these are being essentially fast tracked.
So in
through the
terms of
legislation.
for everybody who's on this meeting and the public, would it be something to say, if you can find time to watch that and then make a public comment, is that too far in advance? I mean, or
Yeah,
is that
no, I think it would be good and to submit some written comment. But when you say watch the public
I'm
hearing,
sorry. I don't know if that matters, but I mean, learn something about what they're proposing so that
yes,
my personal feeling, and not speaking for the NNA, but my personal feeling is that the idea that more things would be as of right for industrial uses without or any uses without public input, I would like to make a public comment that I'm not in favor of that ever.
right.
So I'd want that public comment on record, and I don't know if anybody else who feels the same way would want to know what to do next or how to make a comment that way.
Right.
That's just a thought. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, and it's really hard to digest all of those bills. Some of the legislators who are opposed to it have done a pretty good job at putting some recaps out there. But in ENNA, as you know, we try to put out kind of unbiased just information and pros and cons on both sides of these issues. And it hasn't been easy to do that because on the other side of it, the information that looks to support these things are really from lobby groups. And so we're not really inclined to post that type of information. In terms of people getting up to speed, it's really not easy to do because you either have to read the legislation or watch those videos. And the public testimony video, where you can basically hear pros and cons and oppose and support on these, can go from 10 o'clock in the morning until like after midnight. So I don't know if maybe that public hearing may actually even still be going on.
Okay.
So
Good,
Ian,
good to
I mean,
know.
I'm still
Thank
going to try to do just like a recap, like on each of the bills to say, just do like our who, what, when, where, why, like the guts of it, to say, here's what's in the bill. Here's what this legal language says that, people can't really understand. And here's what it could mean to East Norwalk. And try to do that for each of there's really 5 bills, I think, that are the most, the ones that would impact communities the most. And those are the ones that are linked in the, in this weekend's email from us. Go ahead, Megan.
We do have 2 raised hands if you're taking questions.
Yep. Let me just get through these updates quick, and then we'll come back because we're going to open everything up and we can start wherever anybody wants. Sorry with my cursor there. I do this all the time. 93 Winfield Street, just to let everybody know, the zoning commission does vote on that application on this coming Thursday. I say it's safe to say that it will be approved unanimously. Public comment period is over. Well, I shouldn't say it's over. They voted earlier this month to not require a public hearing for the new plan with the 11 units there, much to our disappointment. So they voted not to hold the public hearing, which means it goes right to final review and vote. And we expect that it will be approved and probably unanimously. So you can tune into Zoning Commission to watch that process, and but you can't speak at that particular meeting on Thursday night. And Strawberry Hill, just a radar alert on this one. We do keep an eye on the legal notices and any applications within the neighborhood, and happen to catch a liquor application coming through for 14 Strawberry Hill Avenue, which is right there at the corner of Fitch and Strawberry Hill. And looking to do in that building there's an office / warehouse building right there on Strawberry Hill. And they're looking to put in a wholesale beer operation. So not really clear on what that allows them to do. So I did request the actual application from the state liquor control and was able to get that over the weekend and reviewing it now to see whether or not this is cause for alarm in the neighborhood, and if ENNA should file what's called a remonstrance. And remonstrance is just a fancy word for filing an objection to the actual application, which we're legally allowed to do under a specific time frame. And I think in this case, the deadline for the remonstrance is April 10th. And if we do advise the community that this should be objected to, we would need the signatures of, I think it's 10 residents in 06855 to sign the actual objection. So I'll do some more digging into that and just see, how much this actually impacts us, especially if it's going to be a lot of truck traffic, as you guys know. And just to make sure that there's nothing related to this application, even though it says wholesale, we just want to make sure that there's nothing related to it where there could be a consumer liquor sales or any kind of consumer event that would be held at that property. Okay, so now it is, we are going into, I realize there's all kinds of other topics that we could give updates on and talk about, just from the ENNA board and me. But we've really, it's been a long time since we just kind of really had an open night where we could spend some time with folks just asking questions or providing suggestions or feedback. So Megan is our co-pilot and monitoring chat and raised hands. And again, if you're calling in on the phone and you'd like to participate, you press 9 to raise your hand. And when Megan unmutes you, you can press *6 to unmute yourself.
All right, June was the first raised hand, so I'll ask you to unmute June.
Are you saying Judy or June?
I was saying June, but we can give them a minute to rejoin. So Judy, you can go ahead.
All right. Well, I had two things. I did listen in on some of the state hearing today. I was sort of in and out because I had a lot of other Zoom meetings. And they seem to be concentrating a lot on affordable housing and getting away from driving. And there was some implication in one of the bills that on transit-oriented districts, that the cities only had to choose one station to create the district. And if that goes through, it means that East Norwalk has been chosen over anywhere else that has a station or the bus hub in Norwalk. So I just wanted to mention that. On the Strawberry Hill wholesale beer application, I wonder if that location would be consistent with what they're trying to get through the TOD. It seems like that would take up some of the space that that was in the plan of use, at that location. I don't know if that's true. That's just something.
Thank you, Judy.
Yeah. All right. That's it for now. One other thing, Diane, I have to admire you. The way that the people who are doing the state zoning thing have dug in on these issues is amazing. They have a law professor at Yale, I think, who has given a lot of advice on this. And also, they're trying to mirror some of the stuff that has been done in Massachusetts.
Thank you, Judy.
All right, that's it.
Okay. Thanks. I'll address these really quick because I don't want to necessarily address everything, but the main crux of a lot of this legislation that's going through now is to address the inequity in Connecticut between cities and towns and the state as a whole in affordable and available housing. And so some of it addresses the fact that the major cities, the 6 big cities, are really bearing the brunt of providing public housing and affordable housing and subsidized housing, and the peripheral towns are not. So some of it seeks to balance that out. But in terms of TOD, I do know that the legislation itself does identify transit hubs, and I wasn't aware of any limit, but right now there are 2 state-approved TOD plans within Norwalk, South Norwalk Station and East Norwalk Station. And then the other hubs would also be considered, and also I-95. I can also say in the legislation, they do specifically discuss 1/2 mile radiuses in a circle around transit hubs. And those would be designated as automatically qualifying for high density multifamily affordable housing as of right. So in our own TOD plan, where the East Avenue corridor has the 3-story high density residential, that's by special permit. And so the state could impose as of right permitting there. Strawberry Hill, because of TOD, the zoning regulations are not finalized for TOD. An application that comes in before a zone is amended is grandfathered in under that application.
All right, we'll go to Cheryl then. I'll ask you to unmute, Cheryl. Cheryl, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Great, we can hear you.
I watched the video last night that Tony Wang chaired with 3 members of the legislature from different areas of the state. It was very interesting in terms of the of these housing bills. There's 7 of them. Yes, there's 7 of them. And there's parts of each one in each of the bills. So any one that gets passed would have changes that we may not really want to go for. I took a lot of notes. It was, as I said, it was very informative. One of the fellows is from a small town. He's a land use attorney. He's in the legislature. And his point was that small towns are shrinking, and where they want people to move to small towns, he says they're not, they're leaving, and the elderly are leaving. And so they're trying to do accessibility, handicap accessibility add-ons to homes that are there or outbuildings that are already on properties to keep the families close, and that the community population does not shrink. I would recommend that you watch it. It's a little bit long, but it points out a number of things. Most of the bills, the intention is that they want to address home ownership, affordable housing, and urban issues. But they, instead of doing that, they seem to be focused on zoning and changing zoning and taking over the zoning within the state of Connecticut and put it under the umbrella of Hartford. It would not be within our town of Norwalk. We would have to deal through Hartford. So I'm not keen about it. There aren't, within the bills, they don't the only thing they directly address is affordable housing. And that's only if there's a 10 units. There's such a difference between our cities, towns, farmlands, and there are different zoning laws because of that. And part of the zoning is about water. We have a huge watershed. There are many watersheds within Connecticut. And if you buy 2 acres and you want, it's fresh land and you're going to build a place, you have to find out if you can have a well driven there. And is there enough, are you able to drill a well? And if not, then you need to buy more property so you can do that if the soil is unsuitable. And then you also have to install a septic field and then a septic system as well. So it's my concern about it is that the state seems to think that they know what is best for Norwalk and all the other towns. And I really do not want to cede my power of my zoning board to the state. And I don't want to lose my personal property rights to the state. I suggest you watch it. And if you watch some other videos, we can all gather information and follow this through the legislature. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. And thanks for hopping on too. I was hoping you would hop on there tonight because Cheryl actually did an excellent recap on some points that she made to the legislature that she said I could copy and paste. So I'm going to grab some of those. I do suggest that you watch the video that was in our weekend's email, the one that Cheryl just spoke about with State Senator Tony Wong. It's really a good overview of what's going on. And also State Rep Terry Wood on her site also has some great analysis of each of the bills and the impact it will have on the communities. She represents Darien, so she's right next door there. And as we get material that we can send out to folks to help you kind of understand this complex issue, we'll start getting more out probably as soon as tomorrow night. Thanks, Cheryl. I can speak a little bit more to zoning stuff, another perspective on it while we're waiting. But Megan, will you interrupt me if you see a hand go up?
Sure.
Please, so I just cut off. So when I sent out the ENNA email on Friday, alerting people, or maybe it was Saturday at the last minute when we got information on the public hearing, I just tried to put information in there so that people would be aware of the public hearing and the fact that that there could be these measures, if they're passed, as Cheryl just said, would actually move a lot of the planning and land use control that's managed by local boards and commissions today over to the state level. And I think what I put in there is that while almost everyone agrees that we have to address the issue of affordable housing and housing as a whole and desegregation, that it may not be best at the state level. The perspective of part of the persuasive argument on the other side in terms of this controversial state legislation, these bills, is that if what was working, if having zoning and land use controlled in the hands of local boards was working, Connecticut wouldn't be in the situation that they're in today in terms of the inequity of the amount of and the locations for affordable housing and housing as a whole, and also desegregation of housing. So this is why I'm saying there's pros and cons on both sides. And zoning and land use, the way that we see it today, has existed for, I think it's 5 decades now. So folks are saying that's really not working. And the communities that are left to having everything that's undesirable be a special permit with public hearings simply draws a large crowd of opposition, and elected or appointed boards then feel compelled to deny them, which they can do, as you know, under a special permit. And part of the argument on the lobbying group side is that because that's not working, the state essentially must intervene and dictate some control that will essentially force zoning to comply and get the end results that they're looking for. And I'm not saying whether you agree with it or not. I mean, that's kind of what the bottom line is. Okay. Anybody else? Questions, comments, any topics that you want to get an update on?
Judy's got another question.
Okay. Good, Judy.
Not another question, really a comment on, I watched a lot of the hearing, as I said. The one thing that they could not do is define affordable, what they meant. And when I looked up and saw what other states do, it means subsidized, which means the money from the subsidy has to come somewhere. And they were talking also about trying to promote legacy ownership, building up dollars. So they're anyway, it was an interesting hearing, what I intended. All right, I'll talk this with the zoning people. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Judy.
Okay.
I'll mention too another thing, because it was a hot topic, as you know, we were just inundated with the whole Norton thing, and the city's industrial zone study. I wanted to mention to everybody before that when you go on and you take a look at the PowerPoint presentation or the video with the consultant's initial recommendations, you will see that they have identified Norton Park as requiring a plan unto itself. So
Right.
They are giving a nod to the fact that it is unique in its location and, abutting by the all the residential neighborhoods. And they suggest in there, which is a good thing, that development that involves industrial with any kind of truck activity would require the use of ramps at I-95. So it's good to hear that from a third party and to have that in writing. So people are wondering what's coming out of Norton. We can look forward to that. However, city staff still does not seem inclined to put in a moratorium on all uses there until we resolve this. And ENNA would certainly, that would be our wish, that they do a public hearing immediately and put a moratorium on industrial uses in that park until we can figure out what the regulation should be. And to Judy's point, affordable housing. So they do, the state statutes do have formulas that communities have to follow when defining affordable housing. There's 2 different formulas that a community can use, and they're defined in the statutes today. And what I've read in the legislation is that those formulas would not change under these new regulations. So I may have it wrong, but I believe what I read is that the actual formulas themselves would stay the same if these bills got passed. I can also mention too that we had a few people who were on the Walkridge and State DOT information session last Thursday night. And we will be posting the PowerPoint of that. And then also we're waiting for the link for the video for that session. Because on behalf of ENNA, I asked a lot of questions and raised a lot of concern. Essentially, what's happening with that is starting this month, some of the major road work begins here in East Norwalk and on East Avenue. The advanced utilities infrastructure work begins at underneath the railroad bridge here in East Norwalk. I think it's actually this Friday. It's this week, and that's going to continue for some time. And then things really get rolling with infrastructure, road and bridge work starting in the fall of this year and continuing for essentially 5 to 6 years. And with each of these road closures and lane closures, there will be significant gridlock and detours within East Norwalk, literally for years to come, with very little break in the action, especially Fort Point, Van Zant, Fitch, East Avenue, and Osborne. So where there are roads and bridges that are being reconstructed and realigned, there will be many road closures and lane closures, nights and weekends. You can see the schedule in the information that I've posted in our email this weekend. If you're on this Zoom call and you're not on our email list, please go to our website and sign up. eastnorwalk.org is the website. Okay. Anybody's hand or chat or anything, Megan?
Cheryl just posted something in the chat. They said that Norwalk provides 22% affordable housing. We're mandated to provide 20%. Darien and New Canaan are way below providing what they are mandated to provide. The Norwalk Hour, a number of years ago, provided an excellent explanation of affordable housing, who is eligible, and so on. Unfortunately, it is the one article I did not save. And they will try to get it from the hour.
Yeah. And I think that's, part of the issue is the inequity between Norwalk and then Westport, New Canaan, Darien, et cetera, with the heavy load of affordable housing. By the way, too, folks can take a look within definitions. There is affordable housing, there's workforce housing, which has a higher threshold in terms of income. That's meant for folks like teachers and nurses and police and fire people in communities. And then there's public housing and subsidized housing as well, congregated housing too. So there's different levels in terms of what's defined as affordable housing. And when you see terms in there that you're reading, things like accessory dwelling units, those refer to add-ons or separate structures, basically as part of single family housing on properties that can fit a small structure on the property. In Norwalk, I think we allow 8 ADUs by special permit, but they actually have to be attached to the house. In other communities, they're as of right, and it can be a separate structure. So it helps to open up the housing market for either empty nesters who have their kids coming back, or people that want to essentially remain on their property, but they may move into a smaller unit and then have other family members own the main house. There's a lot of different iterations of how that works. And when you read these and you see another concept called middle housing or missing housing, that refers to the trend over a long time now, where we're not seeing developments of duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes in terms of housing on properties. And I think the other concept too that Cheryl was talking about with handicapped accessible as well is the concept that you'll hear ENNA talk about, especially with all of the studies, is that we need to start addressing aging in place for people that don't want to leave their homes, and how there could be assistance for modifying homes or building homes that already address aging in place from a architecture point of view. Any suggestions or feedback?
Oh, we do have a raised hand from James.
Okay.
Hi, I just wanted to say hello. This is Jamie Wright from the Norwalk Police Department. I figured I would just say hello again and just let you know kind of a little bit of what's been going on our side.
Great.
Just in going through the last couple of months of some of the call volume, because I was not able to attend last month's meeting. I apologize. But in the last month, we've been pretty good with in terms of stolen cars or burglaries into motor vehicles. We've only had 2 incidents of each. The main thing is just a reminder for both stolen cars, keys were in the vehicle, vehicles were unlocked. Same thing with burglaries into vehicles. One was unlocked and one, I believe, the owner had run into a store quick. So just a friendly reminder to do your best or our best to use common sense, that even if it's a quick run in to get the newspaper at the store, it always provides an opportunity if somebody cares to take that opportunity. We've been doing a pretty good amount lately in conjunction with the traffic unit and other officers out there in terms of traffic enforcement, particularly on Straw Hill, East Avenue, Gregory Boulevard, the beach area. So just, a reminder to people to, especially as the weather is getting better and now with daylight savings, the sun's going to be up later, a lot more people walking, kids going to school, people walking their animals. We're trying to do our best to be present and be out there for you guys. I think just for the last month, I think there's been approximately about 87 stops in East Norwalk for motor vehicle violations.
Oh, good.
And again, I know as the summer approaches and the beach gets busier, and we'll try to do our best to be out there and be visible. And in a lot of ways, our goal isn't to issue citations. Our goal a lot of times is just to make people aware of their surroundings and just aware of their driving habits, because it's easy on some of these roads to, especially as you drive them on a day-to-day basis, if you make routine runs to the beach or Taylor Farm, or you live down that area or any neighborhood, we always tend to drive quicker in areas and roads we're comfortable on. So just doing our best to be out there, be present, and making people aware of their surroundings. Trying to think. There hasn't, luckily, knock on wood, knocking on my head, hasn't been anything too strange, weird, or crazy going on. Accidents haven't been too bad. I think there's been about 24 or 34 accidents in the last month, which for the size of East Norwalk isn't too bad in the amount of roadways and major thoroughfares that we have. Yeah, I figured I'd just give a little bit of an update.
Thank you so much. For those of you on the call here tonight, Officer Wright is our assigned community policing officer for East Norwalk. So he has his finger on the pulse of everything that's going on here. So thanks for the update, and you're welcome anytime. And I do know that we are going to have you in as our guest, probably around we'll work around between you and the transportation folks to figure out which night would be good. And thanks for those updates. Yeah, and the stuff with the stolen cars or the cars that get broken into, it's we do remind people, because the first thing they'll do is they'll report that their car was broken into, and we're kind of like, no, it really wasn't. Like, they just opened your door and took stuff because the car wasn't locked. So, try to remember to keep it locked. Especially too, I also want to say to this officer, right, that I'm concerned with people leaving cars unlocked where they may have the remote mechanisms in there for like a garage door. That's a pretty scary thought to think about with open cars there. And in terms of, I think you're Ron when I was talking about all the construction and detours and lanes and road closures coming up. So I think we can expect a lot of frustration with drivers as all of this starts to happen. And hopefully people will get advance notice. We've asked the state to ensure that they use electronic signage at all the gateways in East Norwalk, like a week before, so that people can prepare and know that there'll be lane closures and that they can prepare accordingly. And also, we do think that the extra duty patrols with police, especially during the summer when this construction is going on, will be, we'll need patience on that side too, because there's a lot of out-of-towners that will be coming through and they're not going to know their way around to get to the beach, for example, or to Taylor Farm. Another thing, when you say there's nothing strange going on, I wonder if while we're still on this call, if you can address the thing we see all over social media of the big bangs and booms in East Norwalk that get reported all the time and on on Facebook. We're sure the police department is aware of it. These just enormous bangs of, we don't know if it's, some sort of an explosive device or.
A lot of times what happens, especially with some of the weather we've had and the windy storms and whatnot, more often than not, it ends up being electrical transformers on utility poles that give off, what could very easily sound like a very large firework or so forth. I hadn't really seen anything recent unless you have any specific dates or areas to check out. But I know that a lot of times we're a little early for the fireworks season, but a lot of bangs or booms like that tend to be utility pole issues with transformers that when those do blow, it does give off a pretty sizable noise.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't really, serve any useful purpose for people to be, speculating about it on social media. So from an ENNA point of view, we encourage people to call the non-emergency number. Because there may not be a patrol car in an area that's aware of what you're going, what's going on in your own neighborhood. And if you're concerned, just call the non-emergency number and they'll have somebody, look into it. But the best, unfortunately with noises like that, it's after the fact. And it's been all over the city, basically. So we, people are, it sounds like it's probably more than transformers and it could be, some sort of devices going off, but.
And as we get into spring, you'll have a lot more overnight construction. So as utility work begins again, as we come out of winter, there could be utility work. I know that I think we're doing some overnight work down by the train tracks and so forth. There, it could be situations like that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and people should expect that. And we're encouraging people to sign up for the Walkbridge email notices of construction that comes out every week. So it tells people where it's happening and when, and what impact they can expect, especially if it's light and noise and detours and things like that. Also, too, while we have you, we had some reports come in from residents in East Norwalk that they feel that the traffic patrols and routine patrols of the cars aren't addressing side streets. And there are streets and areas where people are saying that they've literally never seen a cop at all on their road. And as you know, we feel that visibility is a deterrent, but it's just also comforting for residents. So even with the speeding and the traffic violations where the focus is East and Strawberry and Gregory, can we do something, or can you take a look at what the like what the sector is there for the routine patrols?
In terms of routine patrols, we don't necessarily have any predetermined routes that we take. And especially depending upon the time of day or shift, call volume sometimes dictates where we're able to patrol. And that sometimes gives us no choice. As in regards to side streets, I really wouldn't be able to provide any answer as to where officers may or may not travel during the course of their shifts. Unfortunately, I wouldn't have access to that information.
But if we could, would it be okay, so if we can go back and identify some of these streets that folks either identified to us or on nextdoor.com, if I just email those to you, could maybe you could direct that someone just kind of wander down there every once in a while?
Yeah, if it's
So that
something
there's
where
some
we get a
visibility?
list, there's something we have a daily briefing, and that's something that can be shared with the other shifts as to areas where people have concerns or so forth. That's certainly information we can share amongst ourselves via our lineups, our daily lineups for each shift.
Great, yeah. Because I think
I
some of the
did
concern is
see-
not just the moving violations, it's also the traffic enforcement that you do that's related to illegal parking, things like that are creating havoc as parking is at a premium in many of these smaller streets.
Mhm.
It's important to enforce people, parking the wrong way or too close to the intersection, blocking fire hydrants and all that good stuff. Okay. All right, I'll
Correct.
see if I can get a list over to you.
And I did see somebody had in the chat a question about whether the rules for the beach have been determined. As far as I've seen so far, there hasn't been any updates. So unsure as to what the rules in regards to the beach area, who's going to be allowed access, who will not. I think it might be just a little early for that, but we haven't, that I'm aware of, gotten any updates or emails from City Hall. I know that on Wednesdays, they've been doing the food program down at Calf Pasture, and there's been a lot of traffic. So if you happen to catch yourself meandering towards the beach on a Wednesday, you might want to, unless you're taking part of the program, might want to avoid some of that traffic. But otherwise, the beach, as far as I'm aware, have not gotten any updates.
Thank you. Okay. Anybody else, Megan?
Nope.
Okay, so let me just move off of here. And just want to thank everybody for attending. You can always email us with anything that's on your mind if you want to communicate with us and didn't want to do it tonight. The email is info@eastnorwalk.org. And you can see us on social media and also our website, which is eastnorwalk.org. Just a reminder that our next regular meeting is Monday, April 19th at 7 p.m. Of course, we'll be continuing via Zoom until the foreseeable future. And at some point of that meeting, postponed from tonight, we're going to be doing a little presentation to the founder and former president of East Norwalk Neighborhood Association, Laurel Lindstrom. And we're going to be putting out a call as well for anybody in the neighborhood that may have some archive photos and articles of Laurel and prior activities of ENNA going back 20 years. So if you have any of that stuff in your files and your photo albums, send them into us at info@eastnorwalk.org. And we'll compile that. And unrelated to Laurel as well, though, we're also putting out a call for photos and articles as we move to get ready to celebrate a major anniversary. So we want to start an archive, make sure that we have a historical record of everything. And you can send that in to us at info@eastnorwalk.org. Okay, so we will go ahead and adjourn the meeting. And thank you, everyone. We'll be sending out information via email, so watch your emails. And everybody have a good evening and please stay well.